first semester language arts over all my courses over the first semester.
All right. Hey, what's up? No coughing.
Just died. Batteries. All right. Well, hey, welcome, guys. Welcome to our first in-person Wednesday night worship of the year, which I'm excited about. And glad you're here. And man, we've had we survived 2020. We started 2021. Anybody having a great 2021 already so far? Everything's going good, going your way. Wow. You got COVID. That's okay. It's all right. You're a survivor, right? That's good. Yeah. So here we are. We're back in person, and I think we got some folks online, which we're excited to have you online. And what we want to do tonight is really just kind of, we're going to start off by celebrating that we survived 2020. And so tonight is about survival. It's about how we survived 2020, the craziest year in modern times, right? And so you think about how long 2020 was. It just seemed so long, right? And think about where we were a year ago. Kind of finishing up January, getting ready to start February. Can you remember back that far, how long ago it was? And it seems like at the end of February, that's where we ended up just shutting down, and everything kind of went online because it was in their homes. Everything kind of, Toby's birthday was like the last thing that we got to do. Actually, I think it was Winter Jam, but yeah, it was just shut down after that. So so much happened there in 2020. And so as you think through all that, there's events that took place, there's things that didn't take place, like youth camp. We missed out on youth camp, which was so sad. And thankfully we're going to get to do that again this year. They sent information out today, which I'm excited about, kind of let us know how things are going to go. So I'll be able to send that info out to you guys, to your parents, kind of give you some comfort in what that's going to look like this year. And sign-ups are going to start this Sunday. Registration is going to start this Sunday, so be looking for that. So just a few things to let you know about. We do have youth camp, which we're excited about. We're going back to North Greenville University for Fuge Camp, which is going to be fun. And it's going to be that same weekend. Hit a Fuge Camp slide there. Boom, nailed it. Almost there. So close. That's the one. Yes, click that. I can't remember when Fuge Camp is. Off the top of my head. It just seems so far away. It's July 12th through 17th. Wow, amazing. That is amazing. You are correct. And how did I remember? So yeah, July 12th through the 17th, which is it's going to be at North Greenville University, and it's going to be fun. So be looking for information on registration opening up this Sunday for that. When you get on the list as quick as you can, because we're going to have limited spots. I know that already. So another thing we have coming up, and we're kind of working out details of what that's going to look like, is D-Now. D-Now is going to be March 5th through the 7th. I do remember that. And so D-Now is coming up, and it's going to look different this year, as everything has, right? But it's going to be fun. We're still going to make a good time out of it. And the whole purpose of D-Now is for us to be able to grow in our faith, in our relationship with Jesus, and to grow as disciples. So that's what we're looking forward to. And then we add all the fun stuff that goes along with that. So I remember last year, D-Now was one of the last things that we did. And one of my favorite things from that weekend was going to Urban Air and singing the national anthem in the room there as loud as we could. It was kind of fun. So it was insane. It was great. All right, so that's coming up, and then singing the national anthem usually doesn't come out as like the most fun thing we've ever done, but it was awesome. It was great. All right, and then coming up very soon, Super Bowl 55 is coming up. It's going to be the Bills versus the Packers, and it's going to be February 7th. So what we're going to do is, I think I've mentioned this to you before, my family and I, we've moved closer to Hampton so we can start having you guys over. So that's going to be kind of our first big thing, to have you guys over at our house and celebrate Super Bowl, have some fun, eat some snacks, run around the yard. I set up a trampoline last week. Kids have been testing it out. We're going to have lots of fun stuff out there for you guys to do. We get a big blow-up screen out there and watch Super Bowl together, which we never watch the Super Bowl. We always run around and have fun. So it's going to be good. So we'll get information for you on that here very soon as well, so you know where we live, how to get there, what time to be there, all that good stuff. So exciting, fun. All right, so here's what I want to do tonight. In celebration of surviving 2020, I got some snacks and stuff for us to partake in. So we'll give you guys a few minutes to kind of go around and get those. And if you're online, go raid the fridge and get some ice cream or something. But I want you to celebrate with us. We're just going to kind of hang out for a minute, and I got a little Bible study for us to go. And then I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to kind of share maybe some things that you kind of experienced in the last year, maybe some things that you realized that you survived, that you made it through with God's help. And so we're going to share those things here in just a little bit. So let's do this. Ladies first. We got some Krispy Kreme donuts out there, some cupcakes, some cookies. There's drinks on the way back in. But we'll let ladies go first, and then guys will follow up and get some stuff. So, all right. Ladies, go for it. Guys are waiting on you. Go this way and then come back in that way. Yeah, that's the way to do it. What's up, man? How you doing? Good, good. Knuckles. Good to see you. Hadn't seen you in a while. I think it was summertime when you were here for the slip and slides the last time you were here. Awesome. I'm glad you're back, man. We got some donuts and stuff. Huh? You're a donut. Do not come here, donut. Yum. So, all right, guys, go for it. Go. Yeah. We got some Dr. Peppers, some Mountain Dews, some Wawa. Enjoy. Case.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
How's your mom? Why you working hard on that bullet?
Huh?
You've been working hard on that, haven't you?
Yeah. I did, so
Did you? Did you shave the sides too, or?
I got bored,
You said,
so I cut the sides. I got really bored.
Daddy,
Like one.
Daddy,
I like it.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
They did. It's really dirty.
That's your hair. That's your hair. That is your hair. Wait, whoa. No, your hair ain't that long. Your hair is not. Yeah. Your hair is not that long.
So, 12, turn it down a little bit. Number 12 there. Yeah, so, nice. Too much. So, Christmas. How did Christmas go? Everybody have a great Christmas? Best Christmas ever? Anybody have to quarantine during Christmas, New Year's? Yes! Yes, join the club. We got to do it. Sitting in the room, just nothing going on, catching up on Netflix. And yeah, it's great. I spent 10 days in the room and got to rearrange the furniture, kind of put everything in completely different spots. And yeah, it's great. I watched the kids play outside through the window. They're like, Dad, watch this. Oh, you went around the house. I can't see you anymore. Yeah. So that was fun. That was good. So anybody get COVID? I know it's kind of like taboo, you don't want to. Yeah. You got COVID and you're proud of it. Raise your hand. Yeah. We survived COVID. You had a bunch of people? 9 people in your family? Wow. Yeah.
We had to quarantine ourselves because we couldn't go anywhere because literally everyone else in our family had it.
Yeah.
I gave COVID to 21 people.
21 people? Nice. Wow. I'm amazed that you kept up with that.
Well,
When you got sick.
17 out of 18 in Danielle's family got it from Christmas. And
Nice.
then whatever the math is in my family.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Does that mean you're just too much in people's space, or?
I'm not real sure. We played this game where you pass this wand, and I think I just.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Okay. The COVID one. That's
Yeah.
it. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. So that made it interesting, right? I tested positive on Christmas Day, which was it was like a Christmas miracle, you know. So we did the whole. I made it from Christmas Day through New Year's. I spent New Year's sitting in the room, listening to the fireworks off in the distance, and so it was great. It was good. Awesome. Well, so those of us who had it, we got that in common, which. Maybe that small kid was shooting off fireworks at 8 o'clock, you know, get them in bed. Hey, New Year's. Yeah. We had people shooting fireworks around our house till about 2 in the morning, so it was awesome. It's good. They were really celebrating a lot, so it's good. Awesome. Well, New Year's. Anybody shoot off fireworks at your house? Anybody get to do that? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So New Year's is always exciting. So tonight we're going to be talking about just being survivors, right? We're excited about surviving 2020, surviving coronavirus if you got it, and just surviving life in general. And so thinking about survival and surviving things, I want to talk a little bit about in Scripture how Paul was someone who survived a lot of crazy things that happened in his life. So if you got your Bibles, you turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 11, and we'll kind of look at what Paul talks about, things that he survived and what he went through. If you read through the book of Acts, you see that Paul goes through this huge transformation in his life, and even beyond that, he goes through these trials over and over and over again. So as he does that, he shares a little bit about what's going on here in 2 Corinthians with the church in Corinth, right? And so before we get into that, I want you to think about, I like to tell stories, right? I like to tell stories about things that happen, and I've told a lot of stories over the years. But have you ever been in a conversation with someone where you tell them a story and then they give you like a greater story, and then you tell another story and then they have like an even greater story? You ever been in an experience like that? Yeah. Okay. Yes. So we call those people the one-uppers, right? They're the people that they're always going to one-up their story, right? Those people exist. So has anybody ever been in a conversation with a one-upper before? You experienced that? Or maybe you are the one-upper, any one-uppers in here? Anybody that person that tells this greater story? Yeah. So maybe you're telling a story, right? Like, I once ate a whole pizza, right? I once ate a whole pizza. Yeah, well, the one-upper is going to tell you about how they ate 3 whole pizzas, right? They're gonna one-up your story. Or I ran a mile in like 7 minutes. Yeah, well, I ran a mile in like 4 minutes, right? It's pretty much impossible. There's only a few people that have ever done that. I got some new shoes, right? I got some new shoes, bright blue. I saw some new shoes back there, right? Christmas shoes. So I got some new shoes. Well, the one-upper, they bought a shoe factory, right? They got new shoes coming out of every player, right? And so the one-uppers are the people that are going to kind of one-up your story, no matter what, right? Unless you're someone who's been on the moon, there's really no story that you can't tell that someone can't one-up in some way, right? And so tonight we're going to talk a little bit how Paul talks about all the things that he went through, right? And as he's talking to these people from Corinth, as he set up the church in Corinth, he's talking to them. They want to know more about kind of his experiences, what he's been through in life, so that they can kind of gauge his qualifications to be someone who speaks on behalf of God or someone who's setting up a church, right? So if they hear more stories about what Paul has done, then they can say, he's someone we want to have as our leader. He's someone that we want to listen to and give our attention to, right? And so they're requesting that of Paul as we get to this passage in 2 Corinthians chapter 11. Paul, what have you been through? What have you gone through? And how can you help us feel more comfortable about us trusting you and following you? See, in those days, a lot of people, they would kind of share stories to show just how God is using them, or to show how amazing of a person they are, right? They're going to share their greatest stories, the things that they've done, the people that they've met, the people that they've gone to, right? You think of the person that when you go to their house, they have pictures of all the famous people that they've met, right? It's that kind of thing, right? And so for Paul, they're kind of asking Paul, what are your qualifications? What are the things that make you someone that we can trust and follow and depend on? And so Paul has this opportunity to be able to share all the things that he's done. Now, as we read through the book of Acts, we see that there are tons of things, tons of amazing things that Paul has done, right? There's tons of things that he experienced, things that he did that really give him some great qualifications. Even before he met Jesus, in his training and the things that he did and went through, give him some qualifications to be someone that people can trust and follow in. So if you and I were in this situation that Paul's in, there would probably be some things that we would mention, right? We might think of how many people were saved, right? You have that list, just like Brian has that number of people that he got sick with COVID, right? Paul would have that, he might have that number of people who got saved from his preaching and his teaching, right? We might share that kind of information or that kind of story. Or how many churches we've set up, or how many disciples that we've trained along the way. We might tell stories about miracles, right? Different miracles that we were a part of, different victories that we had in our life. If we were in Paul's position, we might start sharing those types of things that were great, memorable, right? Good numbers, good, positive things to show these people that they can trust us and they can follow us because we've done all these things along the way. We might talk about how Jesus spoke to us on the Damascus Road, that there was that moment in our life where Jesus showed up and showed us exactly who he was, and our life was changed from that point on, right? We might share something like that, but Paul doesn't do that. Paul doesn't do that in this passage. He doesn't go to those things. It's really interesting what Paul does. He begins to talk about the things that he's survived along the way. He really starts to talk about the negative things that he's been through and endured along the way. And it's interesting the approach that he takes, because if you started asking someone to prove to you, to explain to you why there's someone you should follow, and they start telling you all the negative and difficult and bad things, would you follow that person? Probably not, right? Tell me why I should follow you, right? Well, I once was telling something about Jesus. Yeah, how'd it go? I forgot the verses, or I forgot, the story of Jesus, the gospel. I forgot, or I messed up, or I didn't say the right thing, right? That might be someone, okay, we kind of struggle with that person. That person needs some work. That person needs some things they need to work on, right? But for Paul, he shares these negative things, but it's in a really interesting way because he gets to a specific point at the end. Paul begins to talk about his weaknesses and his shortcomings. He talks about really the things that that didn't go right in his life as he was going through ministry. He's talking about things that were difficult, that there were efforts that seemed like they were failures along the way. So let's look at 2 Corinthians chapter 2, or 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 22. Here's what Paul begins to say in response. He says, are they Hebrews? He says, so am I. Are they Israelites? Well, so am I. Are they offspring of Abraham? Well, so am I. Are they servants of Christ? He says, I'm a better one. I'm talking like a madman, with far greater labors, far more imprisonments, with countless beatings, and often near death. So he starts talking about how he's kind of born into being someone that knows the Word of God, that knows the law, but then he starts to transition into these things that he's been through, that he's endured, right? He says, far greater labors, far more imprisonments, with countless beatings, and often near death. So he begins to start talking about all the difficult challenges that he's been through. And he goes even further than that. He says, 5 times I received at the hand of the Jews the 40 lashes less one, which is 39 lashes, right? That's what Jesus received. That's how they would punish someone, because the belief was if they whipped someone 40 times, that would bring them to death. So they would do it one less than that, so it was to the point of death. 5 times Paul received that punishment for the things that he was doing. It says 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. A night and a day I was adrift at sea. On frequent journeys, in danger from rivers, danger from robbers, danger from my own people, danger from Gentiles, danger in the city, danger in the wilderness, danger at sea, danger from false brothers. It seems like everyone was out to get Paul. No matter where he went, people were out to get Paul, right? Whether he was in the city, whether he was out in the wilderness, the people that were his brothers, the people that were his enemies, they were out to get Paul. In verse 27, he says, in toil and hardship, through many a sleepless night, in hunger and thirst, often without food, in cold and exposure. And apart from other things, there's this daily pressure on me of my anxiety for all the churches. Who is weak, and I am not weak? Who is made to fall, and am I not indignant? If I must boast, I will boast of the things that show my weakness. The God and Father of the Lord Jesus, who is blessed forever, knows that I am not lying. At Damascus, the governor under King Aretas was guarding the city of Damascus in order to seize me, but I was let down in a basket through a window in a wall and escaped his hands. So, as they're asking for Paul's qualifications, right? Why should we follow you, Paul? He begins talking about all of these bad things that he's been through, right? Can you imagine how Paul would get to a place where everyone wanted to punish him? Right? If tons of people wanted to punish you, does it seem like you've done a great job as a leader? Probably not, right? Probably not. If everyone you come across really wants to punish you, then maybe along the way you haven't done a really great job as a leader. So what Paul's doing is really pointing out his shortcomings, pointing out the weaknesses in his life. When he goes and he shares the gospel of who Jesus is, not a whole lot of people listen. He's not someone who is a popular voice in the places that he goes. He gets run out of town quite often. There was one point in his life where he was, when they threw rocks at him, they stoned him to the point where they thought he was dead and just threw his body outside of the city. But then he lived, right? Somehow he lived through that. So Paul was someone who went through life. He did what God called him to do, but it didn't go so well no matter where he went. People wanted to destroy him and punish him for the things that he had done. And so I think it's interesting how Paul shares these things. When we think about this past year, there are a lot of things that didn't really go our way, right? There are a lot of things that we experienced that weren't exactly how we wanted to do them. There were people who graduated, right, that didn't get to, they had to do online school, and somehow, some way they ended up graduating at Landwehr Speedway, which was pretty cool, right? They got that out of it, but their senior year was kind of shot, right? Their senior year didn't have all the special things that a senior year is supposed to have, right? They missed out on so many things. And so as we think about this past year, there's so many things that we experienced and went through. But I think as we think about all those things that happen in life, maybe they happen for a purpose, they happen for a reason. And that's what Paul's trying to get to. That's why he's trying to point out what gives him the qualification to be someone who's going to lead these churches is because he's been through all of these things. So how does that work out? How does that make sense? Let's look at verses 22, 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 9 through 10, points out really some of the things that Paul gets to that he wants to reveal to this church as he's showing them exactly who he is. It says, 2 Corinthians 12, 9 through 10, it says, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly in my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weakness, insults, hardship, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. That's the point that Paul's trying to make with these people in Corinth. Really, the weaknesses are where Paul has really kind of set himself aside, right? He's kind of set aside his goals. He's kind of set aside his way of doing things, and he's allowed God to put in God's way of doing things. So Paul's been really fulfilling God's way of doing things. And so in Paul's weakness, in surrendering himself to God, that's when God has come in and he's done great things. That's where those numbers of how many people were saved and how many churches were set up, those things come from God's will being done in Paul's life, not Paul accomplishing those things. So what Paul's revealing is that he's more qualified to be their leader because he's put himself aside and he's actually allowed God's way of doing things to rule his life. He's allowed God's way of doing things to become his motivation and what he wants to do. So in his weakness and setting himself aside, he's actually allowed God to come in and become his strength, to strengthen him in things that he does, the great things that he does. And so as we think about this past year and what we've endured, what we survived, what kind of things took place in our lives that maybe God's teaching us through? What is he trying to teach us through those things? How is he trying to teach us to depend on him more and to put ourselves aside and to allow him and his will to become our motivation in the things that we want to do? As Paul is talking about just the great things that God's done in his life, he's trying to give God the credit and give God to give the understanding that God is the reason that he's able to accomplish these things and that he's qualified to be who these people want him to be. God's power is made perfect through weakness. So it's when we let go of our way of doing things and then we surrender to God's way of doing things that this true strength shows up in our lives. And so what I want to do is give you guys an opportunity. We just have a few minutes here, but give you guys an opportunity to maybe think about some of the things that you've been through this past year and how maybe God is trying to show you how to trust Him and depend on Him more. What is it that God maybe was teaching you this past year through some of the difficulties that you went through, maybe the failures or the weaknesses that you experienced in this past year, that He's trying to teach you to do something or teach you to trust in Him more. And so we got the microphone up here. It's right up here available for you. And so I know some of you have already been thinking about it, thinking about some of the things that God's taught you. So if you want to come up and you want to share with the group maybe something that you endured this past year and what God has taught you through that, you have an opportunity to do that. And so anybody want to do that? Anybody want to start it off? Ivan's on it. Awesome. So Ivan, what'd you experience and what you got teaching? Actually, just lift it up. It's number 9.
Hello?
Oh yeah, there we are.
Alright, so what I've learned is that to trust God no matter what's happening in your life, no matter what's happening in your family, no matter what's happening at school, between your friends, family, anything, to always trust God more than anybody else, because this past year's been pretty rough for me, and haven't really had the best family this past year, I guess you could say. So I've always put my trust in God, and then things have always came out the way that I planned them to be, the way that He planned them to be, because I trust Him.
So this past year it was crazy, right? It only got crazier as it went along, right? So what kind of things did you endure, did you experience, and what was maybe something that you learned out of that experience? Anybody else want to share? Karen? Okay. Huh? Yeah, go over here so we can hear you. Alright. Karen, what did you do this year? How did God show you?
Well, I just learned that basically God's plans are, like, in the end, it's going to be, like, better than anything that you ever expected, and that He works in, like, crazy ways. Because I never thought that I would be, like, where I am, like, leading worship at my school and stuff, and, like, being baptized almost a year ago. It's kind of just, like, crazy stuff that He works. But it's crazy how He uses people in your lives, like, for His will, and how He uses you. But, like, no matter what happens, like, He gets you through it, so.
Yeah. God's faithful. Paul learned that, and that's what he was trying to get his church in Corinth to understand, right? That God's faithful, and even though we go through difficult times, something we see over and over in Scripture, even though we go through difficult times, that these are opportunities for us to grow in our trust in Him, right? Anybody else want to share? Most nervous thing. Get up and talk in front of everyone. And I didn't even warn you about it. Maybe there's something that you have to share that everyone else needs to hear. Awesome. Amy's going to share? Sweet.
Is that good?
Great job.
I was just saying something good has come out of being in quarantine and being lazy, I guess, is I don't really have anything to do. Like when we first got out and this Christmas and we had to stay in quarantine, there really wasn't a lot to do. And so I think